Okay, so these are the bones of the pectoral girdle and then the humerus, which makes up the upper arm. So the pectoral girdle is made up of the clavicle and the scapula, okay? And so they articulate right here on the acromion and the acromial end. Okay, so let's go through the parts now that you kind of see them together. We'll start with the clavicle. Now, the figures in your book are all from the right side, which is this guy right here. So I want you to know the parts on both pieces. For the clavicle, you only need to know the names of the two ends. So there is the sternal end, which articulates with the sternum. Makes sense, right? And the acromial end, which articulates with the acromion over here on the scapula, which we'll get to in a second. Okay? So when you look at them on end, the sternal end looks more like a triangle, and the acromial end looks more flattened. Okay? So the sternal end of both of them and the acromial end of both of them. The other thing to know when they are kind of laying on the table like that, we are looking at them from the superior surface. So this is the anterior and this is the posterior. Okay, but that's the clavicle. Next is our scapula. So here are our two scapulas. Actually, they go like this because the humerus is going to articulate right here in those glenoid cavities. Okay? So our scapula, the things that you need to know are, let's see, let me pull up my list here. You need to know the acromion. Now, when they're like this, you need to know that the flat surface is the anterior side, and the one with the spine on it that we'll get to in a second is the posterior, okay? So looking at it from the anterior side, the hump that is in the back on the posterior side is the acromion. So this is the acromion and this is the acromion, okay? And then the hump in the front is the coracoid process, okay? So these guys are a coracoid process. The glenoid cavity is on the side right here, and those are the little sockets that the humerus is going to fit into, okay? And again, you can see in the front the coracoid processes, and on the back, the acromion, okay? On the back, or the posterior sides of the scapulas, so we'll put them around here again, you can see this big guy is the spine. Then there is the infraspinous fossa below, and the supraspinous fossa above. Okay, and again, this is your acromion, okay? So that's your scapula. And then finally, we have our humerus here. Okay, so we do have a right and left humerus. This is the right humerus, this is the left humerus. So remember, we named them based on the person that was giving us the humerus, okay? And to figure out which side is anterior, which side is posterior, you look at these bottom parts right here, okay? So down here, we have the capitulum, okay, which we'll get to in a second. And we have the trochlea right here. But see how it's kind of long at the bottom? And over here on the back, we have the back of the trochlea and just one fossa, okay? So the posterior has one fossa, the anterior you have two, okay? And a longer bottom here because you have a capitulum. Okay, so once you find out which side is anterior, then you need to figure out which side is medial and which side is lateral. And so you need to look up here at the top for the head of the humerus. And the head is always going to be medial because that's where it articulates with the scapula, okay? So make sure you have them anterior and make sure your heads are pointed medially and you have it set up correctly. Okay, so now let's go through our parts. Okay, first is the head at the top, okay, which we've already kind of talked about. Okay, then your greater tubercles are right here. Okay, and then your lesser tubercle is right here. Your deltoid tuberosity is going to be an enlargement here on the side where your deltoid muscle is going to attach. Okay, and then your trochlea and capitulum are both down here at the bottom. Okay, so the capitulum is more rounded, and then this right here is the trochlea, okay? And on this side, you've got the capitulum and the trochlea. So the capitulum is always lateral. Okay? Next you have your radial fossa. Again, it's going to be lateral, and it's this indentation right here. Okay? Then your coronoid fossa is going to be this next one over, the one that is medial. Your olecranon fossa is on the back. It's this indentation right here. And then our last two are our lateral epicondyle and your medial epicondyle. So the epicondyles are going to be the enlargements on the sides. And so then you just have to remember which side is medial and which side is lateral. Okay, if we flip them back over to the front, medial is always where the head is. So this is your medial epicondyle, and your lateral epicondyle is on this side. So that over there, and then when we flip it over, you have your lateral epicondyle and your medial epicondyle, because it always lines up with the head.